Welcome to Homegrown History with Limestone County Archivist Rebekah Davis and longtime Athens, Alabama native Richard Martin. Each episode, Richard and Rebekah bring to life some of the famous and infamous stories etched in Limestone County's rich history.
Hello, and welcome back to Homegrown History, your Limestone County History podcast. I'm Rebekah Davis, archivist at the Limestone County Archives. I'm here with my co-host.
I'm Richard Martin, the oldest one here.
Indeed, indeed. And if you hear that little chuckle in the other mic, we are very fortunate to have a special guest with us today. Joining us today is Sandy Thompson. She is the director of the Alabama Veterans Museum, which is also in Athens, just right down railroad tracks from the Limestone County Archives in the old event center, Limestone County Event Center. I guess part of it's still the event center, isn't it?
We don't call it the event center anymore. We call it the event venue at the museum.
Right. And so Sandy...
It is still rentable space.
Yes. We'll talk more about the museum at the end of this podcast and give Sandy a chance to tell us a little bit more about some of the special exhibits and things they've got going on there. But the reason that we have Sandy here with us today is we wanted to have a conversation about World War I and World War II in Limestone County, because both of those wars touched Limestone County in their own way, even though it's not like the Civil War where it was fought on our soil. But I mean, Sandy, there really wasn't a family in the county that wasn't in some way or another touched by these wars, especially World War II. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And Richard probably knows that.
We all were touched by it.
Yeah, Richard's got a personal connection.
Yeah. From everything from recycling to using your fat for bullets.
That's right.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And I've got a personal story in my family about some of the things that my Great Aunt Jerene did. So that kind of just gets us set up. Sandy, before we get started, tell us a little bit about what you do there at the museum and how you kind of came to be there and so active and involved with Limestone County's veterans.
Well, I never imagined that I'd end up being a director at the museum, but I spent 22 years in the Air Force and ended up in Athens because my husband, he retired here and went to work at Redstone, and I retired from San Antonio, so I went from San Antonio, Texas to Elkmont, Alabama.
That was a culture shock, wasn't it?
So once I realized that, okay, being retired is not really all it's cracked up to be, I was fortunate enough to get hired as the first director at the Veterans Museum. And what we do is we like to just honor all veterans, everything from the Revolutionary War all the way up to modern day times.
Now, when was that museum established?
They actually opened in 2002.
Okay.
Very limited in 2002. Ken David, he's actually the father of the museum.
Right.
It was in remembrance of the 50th anniversary of the end of World War II.
I think so, yeah.
And he wanted to have everybody go into their closets and bring their items in.
And boy, if you build it, they will come, right?
Absolutely. Well, after they had their little show, nobody really wanted to take their stuff back because they didn't want to stick it back in the closet because nobody could see it there. Right. I mean, that's how we get a lot of our thing. Well, I shouldn't say a lot. I should say 99.9% of our items are donated. So they come from the closets after, unfortunately, Uncle Joe has died, or say, my dad passed away. I knew he was in the military, but he never talked about it. After he passed away, we found this in the closet. I mean, it's amazing what we have that's been donated. So that's how it came to be, and it's just grown from a small exhibit to a over 10,000 square foot exhibit hall with. Now we have our library, we have some virtual reality, we have classrooms. And like I was saying, we do have an event space that we rent out.
You know, I remember it started out in the other train depot, and it was just in one little room. And my mom actually volunteered over there back when all it was just that one little room with the warehouse and all. Yeah, that back at the very beginning.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, and so to see it grow over the past 20-something years, you know, it has just been really, it's won several awards along the way, too.
Yes, we have. And we've been very blessed with recognition and funding from the state and the county and the city.
Right.
You know, and of course the community. We couldn't do it without
Well,
them.
it's a real positive thing for our community. Well, in 20 years, so you've been there about 20 years, huh?
14.
Oh, 14
Right,
years.
14.
Okay.
Yeah.
So during that time, I'm sure you have just really been blessed to talk to so many family members and to veterans and so on, and just to hear their stories, haven't you?
Yes, actually, that's one of the best parts of the job is just talking to veterans, and every veteran has a story. I don't care if you were in for a year or 25 years. You know, you have a story. So
exactly.
we love hearing the stories, and we're actually doing a database of veterans. So if you're a veteran and you want to be part of our database, come on in and see Bob Borton, and he'll get you in our database. And in the future, if your family wants to look you up, they can just come into our library and look at our archives.
That's super cool. Well, and a lot of what we're going to talk about today are, of course, especially the World War I soldiers are pretty much all deceased now, and the World War II ones are
well, almost.
I was going to say, believe it or not, I only know of one World War II veteran that's still with us, and that's Jack Hunter.
Oh, yeah.
And Jack Hunter just turned 97.
Yeah.
Wow.
97, yeah. As a matter of fact, we had cake yesterday for Jack Hunter. He
Aw.
turned 97. He was a B-17 pilot.
Yeah.
And Julia Smith, who just turned 93, and she's our librarian.
Oh.
And she was married to a Marine, too.
Oh,
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, let's start in just a little bit. I know World War II affected Limestone County and, Limestone County soldiers more than World War I did. But I still wanted to talk a little bit about, what happened here in Limestone County during World War I and then go into World War II. And just as a refresher, the U.S. entered World War I in 1916. Isn't that right? Or was it 1917?
I think it was 18.
Okay. Well, I know by 1917 that there were some Limestone County.
17.
Yeah, there was some Limestone County folks. I get it mixed up because the courthouse, they tore down the old 1835 courthouse and started building the one that we have now in Limestone County in 1916, and everything was going great until the war broke out and the price of materials skyrocketed. And so it took until 1919 to get the thing built, and the builder, went bankrupt and had to bring in a local guy to finish the job and cut a few corners here and there, which is why it cost, $7 million to renovate it this last time. But and I know Faye Axford, who was a longtime Limestone County historian, she has compiled, I have a copy of it. You hear me flipping pages. That's what I'm looking through. She has compiled the abstracts of the newspapers of Limestone County from World War I and World War II. And of course, it's not just what was going on with the war. It's, who was getting married and who died and all this stuff. But it's a really good resource to kind of look through and see. And, of course, the newspapers are there at the Limestone County Archives, too. And you see a lot of local folks who were leaving their post here in Athens and going into the same type position in the military. And so I know we had mentioned before we start recording Dr. Glaze, Dr. A.L. Glaze in Elkmont. He was a doctor. You knew of him, didn't you?
Right. We have just a short bio on him. I think he left Elkmont and went to Pennsylvania and served at the hospital there.
Right. He was an Army surgeon.
Right.
And so you see people, throughout the war, during World War I, you see local people who were resigning their positions for a commission to serve in the war and to serve overseas. Right. And so what do you know just from your studies of World War I and the veterans that you have highlighted there at the museum?
We have quite an extensive World War I collection, but I guess the thing that surprises me or just baffles me is how people in Limestone County, in a little town like Athens, knew anything of Archduke Ferdinand being assassinated, by the Serbians. It's just like, how does that translate? How long does it take that kind of information to get to a small town like Athens?
Right.
And for someone from Athens to say, okay, I want to go across the water and protect these people. I mean, today we do it all the time, but how did that work back then when they didn't have technology? They didn't have newspaper. They had newspapers. But,
at the time, you had the Limestone Democrat and the Alabama Courier, which you think about it, in this little bitty town, there were two newspapers. But, of course, one of them served the Democrats and one of them served the Republicans. And so, but they were printed at the same place.
Yeah. I just think it's funny that, people from a small town would want to go all the way, over there to Austria and fight. And then, of course, you get the Germans involved and the Russians and.
Right. Well, and one thing I look at when I see the names of the men who were drafted and then who actually volunteered, a lot of them were some of the, I don't know if you want to say upper class, but, some of the ones from the older families and so on. A lot of them were the ones that were answering the call. And then they're also, in World War I, you see a lot of black soldiers being called up.
Right.
And of course, you got to realize at that time the armed forces were segregated.
Oh, absolutely.
But we see a lot of black soldiers who served from Limestone County in World War I. And one of the most interesting to me is a man named William Kane. And William M. Kane, he was a farmer in Belmina, and he was drafted. And he tried to get an exemption to care for his family. He had children, but he was denied, and so he had to serve over in France. And on the very last day of the war, he was wounded by gas, so he was awarded the Purple Heart for his service. Now, the reason we know a little bit about William Kane is that a few years ago, there was a traveling exhibit that went all around the state about Alabama in World War I, because there were a lot of Alabamians who fought in World War I, and one of the centerpieces of the exhibit was William Kane's Purple Heart. And it ended up, I think it's in the state archives, but the Alabama Historical Association that brought this exhibit in, they really wanted to try to track down William Kane's descendants to see if they could find out anything more about him and, maybe even return the Purple Heart to his descendants. So we put the word out, and, there's a lot of Cains, C-A-I-N, in Limestone County to this day. But we never were able to find the descendants of William Kane. So if anybody's listening to this and they go, I know who that was. That was my great-great-granddaddy. Well, you can email us or call us and give us a heads up, because it would be nice to be able to make that connection between the soldier and the people who are still living today.
Yeah, we never found anything on him.
No, we didn't.
To revisit that.
Well, and Richard, you have a connection. I saw that Lieutenant James Martin was serving in Chattanooga, and his daddy W.L. went to go visit him.
Right. He was drafted, and he went in while I was in college, and he stayed. He became an officer of training the troops to go over.
Now, this was your uncle, right?
This is my uncle. And that's what he did during World War I. So he went up to Boston, up in that area, and helped train the boys to go off. But then he had a first cousin, Lawrence Martin. He went into the service in World War. He was going to Green Elementary School at the time, and he heard he was going to get a whipping, so he jumped out the window and caught a freight train, went to Detroit.
Well, that must have been a heck of a whooping if he could join the military instead of getting a whooping.
And he joined the army up there. He was a mess.
Where did he serve? Do you know?
No, he took care of mules. He trained mules.
Oh, mules.
Yeah.
I thought he said muse.
I did too. He trained mules for the army in Detroit?
No, they sent him to Texas.
Oh, okay. I was like, the twists and turns of this story just keep on going. Well, and of course, a lot of the men did serve overseas, but you see a lot of the Limestone County folks were serving actually in places around the country.
Yeah, I don't know if you've seen him there, Marvin Crowley.
No, tell me about him.
Oh, he served in France in World War I, yes. And we have a new exhibit on the whole family. The Crowley family, Crowley-Smith family.
Tell a little bit more about that.
Well, Joe Crowley. I think you know Joe Crowley.
Right,
he was in the Navy on a ship. And then there's several other family members. So we have a whole display on the Crowley family.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Jimmy Woodruff's grandfather served there. He got gassed.
Oh, did he?
And he died later on.
Really?
He did, yeah.
Well, that's how the William Kane was wounded. He was gassed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's so sad to think of somebody who made it all the way through the war and on literally the last day, that's when they are injured. But, gas doesn't know about peace treaties, does it?
And that's the start of trench warfare and all that.
Yeah, that's right.
That's when it got really bloody instead of just, the Revolutionary War, he just stood up and said, okay, y'all ready?
Right, yeah.
In World War I, they started, digging trenches and throwing gas in there. And
at the time it was called the Great War because they thought this was the war to end all wars, and that the whole world would never all join in the fight like that again. Of course, it wasn't that long before it did. I thought this was kind of a neat little tidbit. On November 1st of 1917, it says this is from the newspaper, the first group of Negro soldiers left Athens for training at Fort Dodge, Iowa. The Reverend Holiday of the Village View Methodist Church, which is still in operation here in Limestone County, and Luther McWilliams and Dr. Hill all spoke on the occasion, as well as Thomas Macklin Hobbs, white guy who Hobbs Street is named after, and W.R. Walker and Fred Wall, which those are all white men. Yeah. The Coleman Brass Band was brought by white citizens, and over 1,000 Negroes and whites gathered at the train station to see them off, while the men were saying that they were going to get that man who was causing all the trouble. They were talking about the Kaiser. And so I really thought that was cool. I never really knew that so many people turned out to see these black soldiers off, and the show of support by black and white people from Athens and even from Coleman, which is an almost exclusively white town, was really something to, I feel like that kind of shows a lot of how much support there was behind the troops.
You're going to war, your color does kind of fades away.
Right. Well, and I'm kind of jumping ahead a little, but that's, part of what, after World War II was over and all black people and white people soldiers had served side by side, and then came back to Athens, and all of a sudden they couldn't eat side by side, and they couldn't learn side by side. And, right after the war, it was in 1946 that there was a race riot in Athens, and it made national headlines. Yes. Yeah.
Richard's like,
it was bad. I saw it. I was a little boy. I was down there at Bayless Hightower's house, Bill Hightower, and we could see them in the streets screaming and yelling.
Yeah. I think there was like 40 or 50 young men who were all arrested that night, and black and white young men who had all, because they had all gotten into it.
Well, it started with a drunk. He was drunk. He got mad about a job, is my understanding, and then it went into that.
Yeah.
But nobody was killed. No property was burned. It's just ego.
Right. I do remember Anna Lee, whose father was the sheriff at the time.
That's right.
I remember her talking about how she and her sister Marjorie Walker had to make biscuits for all the and her husband also served in World War II.
He sure did. He
was it World War II or Korea?
Korea?
Yeah.
Walter served in Korea.
Yes. They had to make biscuits for the inmates every morning. And so they had to get up at 3:00 that morning and make like 100-something biscuits, because every inmate had to have 2 biscuits. So they had to make biscuits for all these rioters that were in the Athens jail.
That's funny.
This little notice about those soldiers all leaving also noted that Frank Pickett was probably one of the ones who was in that group that left that day with all of the local black soldiers. And at the time of the U.S. Bicentennial, he went to Washington, D.C. to sing the songs he had composed while, quote, going across the waters. And he was nearly 100 years old at that time. And one of those is entitled Mr. Wilson and the Kaiser. So I would love to find that song. I've never heard it, but apparently Frank Pickett, local soldier, penned a song, Mr. Wilson and the Kaiser. So maybe that's something that needs to be added to the interactive exhibits there at the museum. I don't know. Yeah, you're making a note.
I
am. Let's see. It seems like I had a couple other things. One of the things that I thought was really interesting was that Limestone County really the women turned out to support the soldiers. There was a note of where the ladies of the town all saw the soldiers off, and they made sure that they had New Testaments for every soldier and handed them out as they left. And they led up war bond drives, Liberty Bonds, as they were called at the time. Yeah. And both during World War I and World War II, Limestone County was well over their quota. I mean, hundreds of thousands of dollars people bought. And you think about this was in 100 years ago, how much money that was. That people bought in Liberty Bonds, war bonds, to support the war effort. And this is kind of neat. The county in 1918, the county demonstrator, which was the county extension agent, began a course of instruction on making war breads. Is that something that you've seen? I know at one time, I guess y'all still have the little Victory Kitchen exhibit.
Actually, it's a kitchen with cookbooks and everything, but I don't think I've ever heard of war bread.
Right.
I guess it's probably a reduced amount of flour and
well, that's what it
reduced
said.
amount. You add a little bit more lard or a little bit more water.
Right.
Right.
Well, they used wheat substitutes such as peanuts, cornmeal, soybeans, and others. And they went to the basement of the Methodist Church to have all this instruction on how you can make bread not using flour.
I wonder if that's where cornbread started.
No, cornbread started a long time ago. It started back in 1810.
I guess that's true. Back there with the hardtack and
that's right.
And the corn pone.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first business in Limestone County was a grist mill, Wheaties mill, and that's what
that was up in West Limestone, wasn't it?
They grind corn to make cornmeal.
Now is that still operational, or still isn't there a mill up in?
There is. The Sim Quarter Mill. It's not in operation, but it is still up there on Highway 99, almost to the state line.
But the one I'm talking about, the Whitty Mill Road, up in Elkhorn. But anyway.
Well, you look at it, oftentimes patriotism ran so strong in the family that the whole family would enlist.
Oh, yeah.
In 1918, Thomas Evans of Slough Beach, which would be like the Ripley, Coxey, Clements area, had 9 sons and a son-in-law that were all registered for defense. And then there was another, C.C. Black, also of Slough Beach, had 8 sons and a son-in-law registered. I almost wonder if there was a little competition between Mr. Evans and Mr. Black to see who could get more sons registered.
Well, I don't know about that. It was probably just to feed them, too.
Honestly, that's the truth.
A lot of people went into the military just to eat.
Get clothes.
That's true.
Yeah.
So by 1918, that's when the cessation of the conflict, and that's when soldiers started coming home, and then there was an after-war effort. I thought this was kind of neat. In 1918, the movie Why America Won was shown at the Dixie Theater, which the Dixie was up on the square at one time. But yeah, they showed that movie there, and folks started coming back to business as usual, and we thought we had fought the war to end all wars, and
well, it's amazing. We only had 12 people from Limestone County get killed in World War II.
Is that all?
Or World War I.
Which 12 is still too many, but
if
still,
if it's your family, that's a lot.
When you consider how many soldiers,
the millions that were killed, to only have 12,
right? Now, World War II was a different story, though, wasn't it?
World War II was definitely a different story.
We can go into that now.
Well, World War II was kind of a spinoff of World War I. And then we had a bunch of dictators come in office in Russia and Germany and Japan. And then Japan invaded the islands of Vietnam and all that, and they had to get the rubber. And then World War II didn't start really until about September of 1939 when Germany raided Poland.
Right.
And that really kicked it off.
Actually, interesting thing about that, we just had an exhibit at the museum that the Polish embassy paid for. It's called the Institute of National Remembrance in Poland. And just to go a little bit farther back, I went to Poland a few years ago. I went to the World War II Museum over there, and I met the director. Well, he ended up asking me to be on a committee to pick the monument for Westerplatte. When Westerplatte is actually the first invasion of Poland, the first place where the Germans went in. So they're doing a new monument out there. But they asked me to be on that committee to pick that.
What a great opportunity.
It was wonderful. But unfortunately, COVID knocked me out of going.
Right.
But not to be outdone, we just had an exhibit that the Institute paid for on Veterans Day. And it was about General Anders' army. And General Anders is the one that led the Poles out of Russia after Germany turned on Russia and they got into it because, of course, first they were allies. And this whole exhibit's called Trails of Hope, Odyssey of Freedom, and it's about General Anders and his army, and they led these Polish prisoners out of Russia back into Poland. And I am actually going to Poland in April to sit on a panel to talk about that exhibit.
That's great.
Yeah, so you just never know how, something so insignificant as visiting a museum can turn into this international relations between museums.
That's
and,
very cool.
We're so very proud of our, I don't want to say our little museum here, but when we're talking a state museum on the caliber of like the World War II Museum in New Orleans.
Which I would recommend anybody going to if you get a chance.
I mean, and this World War II Museum in Gdansk is just fabulous.
Yeah.
But it's just amazing that you don't think how that relates back to Athens.
Sure.
But of course, everybody was affected by World War II.
Absolutely.
And this is exactly where it started, how it started. And like I said, Westerplatte was, and I didn't know that until I went to Poland.
Right.
I mean, I knew that, like everybody else, that the war started because Germany invaded Poland, but I didn't know where. I knew why.
Sure.
But, so.
Well, and you say everybody knows, but, we're now coming on 100 years removed, and a lot of people don't, especially younger people don't know. I mean, they've studied it, in school, but it's not in the collective memory, which is why I think it is so important to have the museums and the archives to help keep that present and help tell that story, and people can understand. Now, is that a permanent exhibit, or is that something
No, it's just going to be popped up once a year, maybe twice.
Okay.
And it's 20 panels, and it tells the story. It's fascinating. If you ever want to come and look at the museum, we have a couple exhibits on it. And there's one on, I don't know if you ever heard of the story of Wojtek the bear soldier. Yeah, when they were coming back from Russia, they met this orphan who had a bear cub. So General Anders' army adopted this male cub.
Oh, that's cool.
They taught this bear to carry ammunition.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Look it up. It's
I will.
fascinating.
Well, that's part of what's in that exhibit there at the museum, too?
Well, this isn't a permanent exhibit at the museum.
Okay.
The Poles actually brought me like a bear, and there's a game for kids to learn about it. But it's really neat. But I had never heard of, Wojtek, the military bear.
Right. It's sort of like studying Limestone County history. Just when you think you know it all, you find out another little tidbit of some connection, something that's interesting. And with World War II, Limestone County soldiers really didn't start signing up and enlisting until after Pearl Harbor, did they?
Yeah, Pearl Harbor broke it wide open.
Right. At the end of 1941, when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor.
Right.
And that's when, and the Friends of the Archives a few years ago, and we still have them available for purchase at the archives, they published a book, Limestone County during World War II, Volume 1.
Right.
And it's just the transcription of all the newspapers and the newspaper articles and the pictures and so on. And it starts with Pearl Harbor and it goes to the end of 1942. But you can see how much people just in Limestone County just jumped in with both feet.
Oh, well, speaking of Pearl Harbor and Mr. Gross, Edgar Gross, remember Seaman Gross?
Yeah.
He actually died at Pearl Harbor. He went down on Oklahoma. We have an exhibit on him, too. And I don't know if y'all remember, but about 5 years ago, they finally identified his remains at Pearl Harbor. Wow. And he was part of that DPPA DNA match.
Oh, yeah.
And it took them years. Sure. Stephen Gross, his nephew, lives down. He works for the Anniston Star. And before he contacted me, we had a little exhibit that had some pennies that were on the Oklahoma. And when Stephen Gross contacted me and said that he was trying to do DNA to prove that these remains were his Uncle Edgar's, who he was actually in his 40s. He had gotten out of the military and went back in, and then they sent him to Pearl Harbor. But
where he thought he was just perfectly safe, just enjoying the beaches in Hawaii.
Exactly. He went down on the Oklahoma, and we actually brought him back, I think it's 5 years ago, for Memorial Day.
I do remember,
do you remember that? We had a drive-by with the remains and the casket, and then they did the caisson, the horse-drawn carriage. It was one of the most emotional things I've ever seen. So now on display, we actually have a piece of the USS Arizona, and we have his uniform that was sent back with him with his remains in a whole display. So
we need to go up and revisit.
Well, everybody needs to, and it's just so everybody be aware of the resources and the exhibits and all that you have there. How much you can learn about going up there.
We've just grown so much since we moved.
Oh, sure.
We were so blessed when we got this building, and we've had so many new exhibits.
I know. I took my niece and nephews and my kids there a couple years ago when they came to visit from Texas, and we spent half a day up there. there.
Yeah, you can, especially if you like to read.
Yeah, well, we're kind of history nerds, as you might imagine. Well, let's talk a little bit about what Limestone County folks did to jump into the war effort, because obviously lots and lots of young men and women. I do want to mention that at the time, people didn't know if it was just going to be overseas. We didn't know if what had happened at Pearl Harbor could ultimately happen right here.
Well, it wasn't just overseas. They attacked Pearl Harbor.
Right. And the Huntsville, at the time it was called the Huntsville Arsenal, had just been established right before the war. Yep. So we're right down the road from the arsenal, we consider a target. And so I saw that the mayor, R.H. Richardson at the time, led their first practice blackout. And they had a blackout here in Athens. Everybody had to. It said in less than 4 minutes.
Do you remember that, Richard?
I remember it very well.
I'll tell it what it said, and then you tell about it. It said in less than 4 minutes after the city's signal lights were blinked 3 times at 8:55, the town was in total darkness. There were a few exceptions, such as the prominent merchant who had left his usual light burning in the office. That wasn't your daddy, was it?
No.
He got in his car to go to the office to turn it out, and he was stopped by police and had to phone friends to break the glass and turn out the light. And said Ardmore also had a blackout. So they were practicing. Tell us about that.
Well, my father was in the neighborhood. He was the headmaster for that neighborhood. And when that whistle went off, we all had to go in the middle of the house and cut off the lights. Then he would walk around and see who had their lights on and get after them. Of course, so your
dad was the enforcer.
Right. And of course, my sister was scared, and I grabbed her and I says, the Japs gonna get you.
Oh my God. You were such a bratty little brother.
They're gonna come get you. And my mother whipped me for doing that.
Oh my goodness.
You deserved it. So tell us a little bit more about your dad and what your memories of World War II here, Richard.
Well, he didn't go into about 1944, I think. He was drafted. Mm-hmm. His brother was on the draft board, but he was drafted with age 36 and 4 children.
They were scraping the bottom of the barrel by then, weren't they?
I thought your daddy was on the draft board.
No, he's my uncle, Mr. Robert Carl Martin. Now, Fred.
What did your daddy do?
He was head of the metal and scrap iron.
Which was a big thing here, too, wasn't it?
Okay.
But anyway, he got drafted, and so what they were doing, they were building up, getting ready for Patton to rush in, and they needed a bigger army. And that's the reason why they were taking everything. And he just happened to be at the right place at the right time. And he
said, the wrong time.
No, he got to go in the Navy instead of the Army. He says, some Navy man says, you want to be in the Navy? He says, yes, sir, I do. Stamped it, and he went on in the Navy. So he missed Patton's.
Where did he serve?
He served in the Pacific. He went to the Pacific and stayed out there, and then he served on the USS Alabama for 13 months.
Now, you've been down there to visit in Mobile, haven't you?
We've been down there with him. He took us through it and showed us, and he showed us where he slept and all like that.
What was that like for y'all to actually be right there where your dad had served?
Well, you're about to make me cry right now.
That's fine. We can cry on this podcast.
Right. But it was unreal. And then what the touching thing was, when he came out, there were a bunch of little Girl Scouts. And when they heard he was a veteran, they wanted his picture with them.
You'll make me cry, too.
But anyway, we got lots of letters that he wrote back, and we've written a family history of it all and explained everything, what all he did, and the USS Alabama did, and all like it. It was unreal.
So he was writing letters kind of back and forth to your mama at the time?
Yes, and some of the letters, you could see where they cut it out.
Right.
Because it's sensitive.
Right.
And we never found none of the love letters.
Your mama may have just kept it hidden from prying eyes.
I noticed in one letter, Daddy wrote, says, I appreciate your letter the 21st and the 22nd and the 23rd and the 24th. We never did find those.
I see. Well, the Martins have a display at the museum, too, a family display. Of their uniforms and their daddy's peacoat from the Navy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Tell the story about the family picture. That's one of my favorites.
Well, we wanted to send a picture to Daddy, and Mother lined us up with Olin Mills. And so we all dressed up, and we went up there, and we got in there to take our picture, and the man says, now, y'all smile, we're going to send this picture to your daddy fighting in the war. Well, we almost started crying. That's the reason you don't see any of us smiling.
That's a heck of a thing to say to a kid.
Right. So anyway, we had the picture made, and it's a family heirloom.
Well, and we've shared that at the very beginning, the first episode of the podcast. I think we shared it, and we'll share it again with this episode.
But one of the cutest things, Daddy would always put cartoons in his letters. And we were just excited about getting letters from him. And
well, it seems like I transcribed one or two of those letters for you.
Oh,
and there were all these little drawings on the side. And,
there it is.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
There's the letter.
I don't think I've ever seen these. We don't have these at the museum.
You're going to get all this.
Oh,
when we put it in the book. Then we're going to have a family World War II thing. Okay. You're going to get it. See, that's an actual copy of a letter that he...
Well, he was quite the artist.
He was quite an artist.
He really was.
And, you know, he was sitting there waiting on time and all like that. But the USS Alabama, it missed some of the battles, but it was into a lot of big ones too. And
right. And that's a really cool thing. If you're ever in Mobile, it's a really cool thing to just go and do and see. Even if you think you're not into military history or whatever, but just to go on board that ship and down below the deck and just imagine what it was like, because I always like to imagine what the smell must have been. I don't really like to imagine, but especially on some of these the submarines with all these men down in Cuba.
I was on a troop ship.
Yeah.
And the air flowed good, except when they cooked liver.
Oh, God.
And I lost 16 pounds.
You sure did miss your mama's cooking, didn't you?
Oh, Lord.
Well, my grandpa Wolf served in World War II, and he was from Coleman, and he lived in Decatur. And he never really talked just a whole lot about his service. But now I do remember whenever he got to be in his late 80s, early 90s, and his mind started slipping, he really lost his connection between present and the past. And so you come in there to visit. Hey, Grandpa, how was your day go? Oh, it's been a crazy day. When I was flying over that island, must have shot down at least 50 of them Japs. In his mind, he was still a tail gunner, you know?
My grandfather was the same way. He was a combat medic in World War II, and he was and went all over Europe and Italy, and he was what they call shell shock, PTSD today, and he was so wounded, so messed up from the war that was back in the day that when the VA actually shock treatment them, they actually shocked him. But speaking of the same thing, he would get my grandmother down behind the bed and think that the Germans were invading and just it was horrible.
Right, and of course we think about the losses in the war, which I don't think we ever came up with a number.
I think it was about 70, probably.
About 70? Yeah. But then you've got other losses like that aren't so apparent, And actually, people who died before they ever made it over there. I mean, you think about Skylar Pryor, who was in training to fly for the U.S. Army Air Corps, which later became the Air Force, at what is now Pryor Field. Yeah. And crashed and died. Well, and never served outside of Limestone County.
Looking at this list, there's just almost as many people who died non-battle injuries, like we say sickness, car wrecks, or the other one is non-battle, and then we have the died of wounds.
Right, exactly. So they may have come back home, but eventually one or another. So it certainly had an impact on the people here in Limestone County. And like you mentioned, there were rubber drives. Women were, they couldn't wear silk stockings. I remember seeing pictures of like some sort of advertisement of some like paint. Women would put
a stripe up your leg.
Yeah, they paint a stripe. Like I want to say I saw some woman was putting gravy on her leg because it looked like pantyhose and draw a stripe up the back of her leg, and all these things because nylon and silk had to be using that rubber. There's pictures in the newspapers here of pickup trucks just piled high with tires.
As
for
kids,
rubber
we would go around and pick up rubber. We'd pick up scrap metal. Keys would have keys and turn keys in. They make bullets. And that's what we thought we were doing for the war. That was our job.
Well, you were.
Yeah.
And get the cardboard and the newspapers and all that.
Right.
We'd take it.
Well, and this is my favorite local World War II story because it's personal. Growing up here, my family wasn't from here, and so I just never thought I had any connection. And one day I was at the archives, and after I started working there, I discovered that my great-great-grandma lived here, and I had some family here. Well, I was looking through the newspapers one day, and there was a Limestone Democrat article with a picture of these women, and there was a name under the picture that caught my eye, Jerene Turner. I was like, That's my great aunt. I remember Jerene. She died when I was about 5, and she was mean. Oh, she was a
all those
mean
women back
lady.
then were.
I'm telling you, she was
Look
mean.
at their life.
Well, I got to looking, and as it turns out, Jerene, she actually was the granddaughter of the folks who ran McCulley Mill out in East Limestone. But she and several other women, they were the first ones in Athens to learn how to do riveting work.
Oh, yeah.
And it says, this was in 1942, there was an article in the paper that said, Athens women prepare to do war work. And I love the way this is written. It says, although the measuring cup and frying pan may occupy their hands during the daytime, a number of Athens women discard them when 7 o'clock rolls around each evening and tie themselves to a class in sheet metal work, which in a few weeks will enable them to make repairs to fighting planes or help turn out bombers that will lay waste to Tokyo. And there's a couple of pictures of these women, and Jerene is in these pictures in dresses. She was wearing like a striped wrap dress and low heels, and they are working on sheet metal in these dresses. And it was at Athens High School. Mary Frances Barksdale. There were several different women. We'll share this picture, but there were several different women who were in this inaugural class. And then Jerene was the first one to get a job in the field. So I've always been a little obsessed with Rosie the Riveter. And when I found out that my great Aunt Jerene was the first Rosie the Riveter from Athens, I was like,
Way to go,
cool.
girl.
Yeah, I know.
Where does she go?
So she went to Memphis. When she completed the course in October, she went to Memphis and was working there. And then after the war, all of a sudden, like so many women who had done war work, when the men came back, they were like, thanks, we'll take over now.
That's right.
And she found herself out of a job. So she went to Detroit, and she stayed up there for many, many years until she retired and moved back to Alabama. And that's when I knew her. And, by that time, she was an older lady. She had spent all these years working in men's work, having to basically prove herself as a woman.
The auto industry up there?
I think so. She did
sense.
metal fabrication work probably for the auto industry up there, I'm pretty sure. And so I just have a renewed respect for her and for all of these women who, you got to realize up to World War II, being a wife and mom and daughter and sister in Athens, Alabama meant you trained yourself in the genteel arts,
Right.
and you did not.
Southern ladies.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And, a lot of these women flipped the switch. And, as we've seen over the course of American and world history since World War II, it really changed changed a lot of things. You've got the baby boom, and then you've got so many women that wanted to stay in the workforce. Right. And, of course, here in Athens, in Limestone County, the post-war meant a big baby boom and, a lot of growth in
housing.
Housing.
GI Bill.
Yeah.
Right.
By the time of the 50s, the golden age,
right.
the
right.
50s, what a time that would have been to be around.
Shake, rattle, and roll.
Yeah. I mean, you look back and it just looks like the most wholesome time,
Right.
Yeah.
Everything was good. We'd won the war.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So what was it like for you, Richard, being a kid during the war years and then the post-war years as you were growing up here?
Well, when Daddy gone, we had to walk everywhere. And we had to ride our bikes. And if Mother would call up to the grocery store and we would go get the groceries, Freddie would or David would. And then after the war, when Daddy home, it was just a beautiful world. I was just an innocent little boy. I didn't know any difference. Everything was good all the time. But anyway, it was a great life.
Yeah. Lifford French is another soldier that I know I don't know if you want to talk to him a little bit.
Just briefly.
Or if there were any World War II soldiers specifically whose stories just have really captivated
like
you
you
over
said
the years.
earlier, there's just so many. And I just wish that our dear Jerry Barksdale was with us.
Oh, yes. He'd be in this room right now.
He could remember all of them. All I'd have to do is say one word, and he'd be like telling me about everything about him.
Well, and we've got his book right here on the table.
Duty Called, And
do you sell that book at the archive?
Actually, we don't have any right now. I'm waiting on his son to get us some more.
Okay. Son, get us some.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's called When Duty Called by Jerry Barksdale, and it's all about local World War II soldiers.
Yes, and of course, like you were talking about Lifford French, he was the most highly decorated soldier from Limestone County, and we do have his uniform, and I'm not sure if you know the story about his Mae West.
Tell us.
He was on Push the Button now, right? And he
Wait, that's the name of the airplane? Push the button now? That's great. I love hearing the names of the planes and the art, the pinup girls they painted on the sides and all that.
So anyway, the plane was getting shot down. Instead of bailing, he decided to go down with the aircraft. But in the meantime, he lost his Mae West, or his inflation device. Water inflation. They found it in 1987 in France.
Really?
Somebody found it and sent it back to him.
Oh my God!
Wow!
We have that on this,
So it had did it have his name and his serial number or whatever?
Has his serial number.
That's wild.
Yeah, oh, it's crazy. Yeah, and we have that on display.
Well, and the Frenches were another one of those families that went all the way back. They've been in Limestone County since dirt was invented.
Right. Yeah. So we have him and his brother's stuff on display. And I think one of my favorite stories is Buford Franklin.
Buford and Valeria, that's a whole story too. Yeah. Buford was a really nice guy. I went to church from him when I was growing up. He and his wife was Valeria, and that's right. He had served with his best friend, comrade in arms anyway. And he said, look, if I die, come back and take care of Valeria. So he did. He came back and
married her.
Didn't he show up at the skating rink or something and said, is there a woman here named Valeria or something like that?
Probably.
And but they stayed married until they died.
Yeah, and that story's in this book too.
Yeah.
So just so many stories like that would just never, you just never know what you're gonna.
Right. Yeah. Well, and Nell Lutz, and she just died a few years ago. Tell us a little bit about her.
She was a Navy wave. Nell was very special.
Oh, she was. She was a beautiful lady.
And she was in World War II. She was actually from Florida, though. Right, and her husband, what was it, Frank?
Yes.
Frank
was in the Navy also.
Yeah.
I know she lived here until she died. Well, she was still living just a few years ago when we did The Way We Work. Her uniform is on display as well, isn't it?
Right.
Another veteran, Winston Garth.
Oh, yes.
Winston got shot down and went to the camp. And on the way to the camp, he saw an American soldier lying down, so he picked him up, and it was Dr. Donovan.
Just happened to be a local guy, huh?
No, he was from Mississippi. Oh. And he got to talking, and he says, I'm from Mississippi. And he said, well, Louise Beasley, that's my sister. That's Jim Beasley's wife. So they stayed in prison war for a while. But Winston was a flyer and got shot down.
Right. Well, we could talk about this all day. There's so many stories. But I want to recommend, if we've wetted the whistle and whatever, your appetite for more information about local soldiers in World War I and World War II and the local thing, there's a few resources I think people need to know about. Some of them we've mentioned. Of course, the Faye Axford books, Limestone County during World War I and World War II. We've got them available for purchase at the Limestone County Archives. It's great. It's just, and it's index abstracts. Those are available from the Friends of the Archives. Also, Limestone County during World War II, which is the full text of the articles, plus lots of photos. And pretty much all the photos of soldiers were taken from the World War II honor rolls, which was really interesting. So the newspaper published the World War II honor rolls, which were pictures and basic information of all the local white soldiers. It told who their parents were, where they were serving, and so on. We have a couple copies of those original honor rolls. I think y'all do too.
We do. Mm-hmm.
And the Black community answered with their own. And so they themselves pulled together pictures from the community, and the teachers at Trinity helped put this together, and they published their own, which was called the Colored Honor Roll. And so there are two separate ones, and we have scans of those. We don't have one of the originals, but we do have scans of it there at the archives as well.
We do have some books that Colonel Walker
put that together. That specifically lists the Black soldiers in World War II. And there were some local folks that ended up serving in the Tuskegee Airmen.
Yes.
And
some are buried here on
I can't remember.
Legtown Cemetery.
Mm-hmm. There were several Black soldiers who served in World War II. There's also When Judy Called by Jerry Barksdale, which if it's not available on Amazon, it may be available on his website. And y'all are going to get more there at the museum. So. And then if you just want to start doing some research, the enlistment and discharge records for World War I, World War II, and I think maybe Korea. Anyways, they are all at the probate office, and they're indexed on the master index of the Limestone County Archives at limestonearchives.com. But to get an actual copy of the record, you can go to the Limestone County Probate Office. You have to be a family member and so on, but you can actually get a copy of your ancestors' enlistment record, discharge record, shows who they were and where they served and all of that. And so there's a lot of places where you can go just here locally to get more information about people who served in these wars and about how Athens and Limestone County were affected by that. Not to mention, of course, going to the Veterans Museum, and you all, it's not only a museum, but you all have an archives there.
We do. We have a full library with over 5,000 books, strictly military books. And as I said before, Bob Borden is heading up our database, and he's doing all the research on, and they don't have to just be from Limestone County. It could be any veteran. So if you have a veteran or you are a veteran and you want to put your name in this database, we'd be more than happy to have
That's
you.
fantastic. So is it veterans all over the U.S. or Alabama or what?
Anywhere.
Anywhere. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a great resource. Yeah. Is that something that's only accessible there at the museum, or is it something that y'all are looking at putting online as well?
Right now it's only at the museum. Maybe in the future we can put it online, but we've gathered the information online. We're just putting it together.
That's a really great resource.
You need to go to that museum, and you're going to have to go several times.
Yes.
This is so much to see.
Right.
And it's right here. Gosh.
Right. And it's on Pryor Street, right next to the railroad tracks in Athens. What are your hours?
We're open Monday through Saturday from 9 to 3.
Monday through Saturday, 9 to 3. If folks want to look up more information, what's your website?
www.alabamaveteransmuseum.com.
Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Spell out Alabama, right?
Yeah.
Alabama Veterans Museum.
Facebook.
Okay, yes, and on Facebook is Alabama Veterans Museum. So. Okay, well, is there anything else that either of you can think to add about this?
I'm just glad I lived through it.
Me too.
Me too. Yeah, we have the resource right here in our own backyard.
Right, and I'm glad your daddy lived through it too.
Oh, God. What are you talking about?
All right, well, Sandy, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you to all of you for listening, and we will join you next time for another episode of Homegrown History.
You've been listening to Homegrown History, presented by the Athens-Limestone County Public Library and the Limestone County Archives in Athens, Alabama. For more information and to submit questions or suggestions, please visit limestonearchives.com. And to hear other recordings from our Library Voices series, check out our website at alcpl.org. You can also listen on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.